The new Dalek paradigm were introduced in the 2010 series of Doctor Who starring Matt Smith, and although the design was critically panned by many fans, 9-year-old me loved these props, but never could have imagined that I'd actually own one. Fast forward to 2022, and after being battered around the BBC's storage facilities for the past decade, the actual paradigm Dalek props were auctioned off and I somehow managed to get one. This was promptly brought to Matt Smith's attention at a Comic-Con panel, and earlier this year revealed to the world in a YouTube video, in which I announced my desire to restore the prop. Following this, I was inundated with hundreds of comments from fans who wanted to see him restored, and better still, individuals who specialise in prop restoration offering to help out. Things have moved a lot faster than I could have anticipated, and after just a few months, I'm proud to present the first episode in a new series aptly titled Restoration of the Dalek. One of the first things I did upon getting the Dalek was to trace its history in an attempt to establish which prop it was, where it had been used, and how the hell it ended up like this. I instinctively dropped an email to the guys at Dalek6388, who, thanks to some damage on the prop, were able to trace its use from 2012's Asylum of the Daleks to the 2013 BAFTAs, the Five-ish Doctors, and potentially the front cover of Radio Times, all surrounding the show's 50th anniversary, which makes it this lovely slice of history that I think you'll agree should be preserved for years to come. The prop resided in the reception area of Rothlock Studios for the next couple years, losing only a single dome light during this period. But in 2015 was drafted on set for Series 9 of Doctor Who, despite ultimately going unused. It's one of 3 metallic red drones built for the show, and the other 2 have never been seen since this photo was taken. Unfortunately, the prop never did return to the reception area, and was instead, quite literally by the looks of it, thrown into storage, as it was no longer of any use to the BBC. The last scrap of evidence that we have is this behind the scenes video from 2017, showing what's potentially our missing dome on a shelf. Alas, when production moved away from Rothlock in 2022, the props came up for auction, looking like this. Then a Paradigm Dalek gun and eye were found in an antique shop. This happened to be the pumping station, and funnily enough is located just 10 minutes down the road from Rothlock in Cardiff. So when they cleared out the studios, in addition to what was auctioned off, it seems that other things slipped through the cracks and somehow onto the second-hand market. Unfortunately, the sighting was back in July of 2022, and the props have since made their way into someone's collection on the Project Dalek forum. In February of 2023, another user announced that he'd won the Supreme Dalek from the same auction, and offered to share photographs. This was a big deal, as barring the different colour, the design was identical to ours and had some of the missing parts to reference. More often than not, these props are taken into private collections and never seen again, so this seemed like a rare opportunity. Though unfortunately, after promising photos for a few days, the owner mentioned that he felt unwell and has been completely silent ever since. This was a shame, but it's been a blast helping with the plans on the forum regardless, as members were overjoyed to finally have some accurate measurements for the paradigm design now that they've been released into the wild. Mike Tucker was the first name that came to mind when thinking of Doctor Who prop restorations, so naturally I dropped him an email, to which he replied that he had no involvement whatsoever with the original props, so couldn't provide any insight, though he did recommend contacting the current art department in Cardiff, in the hopes of finding someone who worked on the props originally. So I wrote them an email and have had, wait for it, no response. Just as everything seemed a bit hopeless, I started to get messages from a few more prop makers who went out of the way to give advice. But if you think of it like The Apprentice or something, there was one prop restorer in particular who pitched himself so well that after a few emails I was like, this is who I want to do it. And that was Marley John, who, along with his partner Amelia Howard, specialises in prop restoration, so the duo offered to take on the project as a joint effort. At the same time, a prop builder and collector by the name of Hart got in touch, and just casually drops in the conversation, "I've got the red drone from Doctor Who Live." And I get a photo of the thing just sat there in almost perfect condition. Mental. He then adds, "If you want replacement components, I can help with that," which is incredibly generous, as said components should be a perfect match. And believe it or not, he was already familiar with Marley and Amelia's work, so all of a sudden I'd assembled this sort of team, and the restoration now seemed like an achievable goal. Close-up images were taken and sent to Marley and Amelia so that they could assess the damage and put together a condition report. This was a breakdown of the prop's current state that outlined any scuffs, chips and scratches that would need taken care of. Once complete, we had a Zoom call to discuss the plan of action. I'm excited though, because lots of your research and all that. It's seeming good.
Yes, I mean, we can get straight into the research if you want. I mean, it's basically just going to be feathering out the chips and making sure that we leave as much of the original paint as we can. There are some places where leaving original paint, I don't think really will be much of an option, like the hemispheres, because I don't know how well you can actually see it, but they didn't prime them, and automotive paint doesn't really stick to unkeyed plastic, so it might end up being easier to just say, no, we'll sand them all back and totally refinish them.
Early on, the colour was something I was worried about, because it was mixed especially, but that should be fine to match,
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
So what our sort of general processes for matching paints was our refinishing supply place, and we sort of hand it over to them and say, 2 cans of this colour please, and they've got a little machine and it scans it, and then they can mix the paint, so it will be exactly the same. The other benefit of doing it that way is obviously this paint is 12 years old, so it may have yellowed slightly, it may have dulled or changed in some way, and getting the paint matched that way means that it will be an exact match to how the paint is now, rather than how the paint was back in 2012. The seat, this is gonna last forever. I cannot comprehend why they added so many screws. But then each of the casters only has 1 bolt, and all of them are loose. So the inside, I think, there's not really that much that we need to do other than just checking over it, making sure that it's still solid. You can see a little scrap of evidence of where one of the tensioning bolts would have been.
Oh yeah.
It's literally just 4 bolts, 1 in each corner. Back plate of 18mm MDF. These lines here, these aren't cracks, these are from where the top and the bottom separate. So we build up this section to complete the orbit, and then these little pinholes are obviously original casting defects, so they'll be left. Looking at the base, other than the hemispheres, I think that's the only fiberglass section that may have to just be entirely refinished. Basically, if any of the gel coat is exposed on a fiberglass part, something major has hit into it. We'll have to just assess it in person and see.
But looking at when it was not scratched, it looks jet black, like in any pictures. So I was looking at it thinking, is the black layer the original?
I think they've painted it matte black, gone, that looks a bit dull, and then dusted it with the gunmetal. It looks quite patchy, and that's how something that large dusted with another colour would look. But yeah, again, so much is unknown about these props. So I think what this first stage should be is, like you say, fixing up the paint, replacing some of the hemispheres. So I think what you'll get back at the end of this would be the skirt, base and shoulders fixed up. The only thing missing then would be that rear vent.
So the plan is to take the Dalek to Amelia's workshop so that each existing part can be restored individually. So despite some challenging elements, we now had a plan, and upon completion of this stage, the Dalek would be ready for his replacement parts. So the day has finally come, and we're going to be carting the Dalek off to be restored today, the first part of the restoration. So we're currently waiting for my father and the van. So we've got the Dalek loaded up into the van and we're good to go. And that was a bit of a nightmare and a bit heavier than I remember it being. So yeah, we need to get them padded up as much as possible with as much crap as we can, and then the road to nowhere. So yeah, we haven't heard any noise so far from the back, which is a good sign, because before, if you remember, we could hear a lot of banging about, which wasn't good.
Dalek has escaped.
We don't want him to escape or have any like additional damage on top of what's already there. So yeah, we'll see you there. Before long we'd arrived and unloaded the Dalek into the workshop, where Marley wasted no time in assessing the prop with his own eyes and conveniently on hand set of tools.
So the mould for the shoulders was 2 moulds, the top half and the bottom half. I think they cast a bottom half, roughly filled it in, made sure this bit was smooth. But this is, you're not going to see it.
Yeah. I nearly died when I held that. I remember when I collected it, for some reason I had a picture of it in my mind and it was much smaller because it was like half and I didn't expect it to come up.
Considered putting it in the car, didn't you?
Yeah, I said we'll put it in the car.
The classic series ones and a new series one at a push you could get into an estate. But
It's just not these. That's why they were so awkward. You can just tell they would have been like, ugh, I have to get these out again.
even if you only get them up to where you see them on the Parliament set,
Yeah.
there's that big round. And
Yeah.
it wouldn't even go up the drive.
Yeah.
We went through the episode and loads of screenshots and tried to figure out which one it was. And
Any
we ruled
clues?
out one,
Really?
but there's still 2 that it could be.
That was the Dalek 6388. People looked at that and said they couldn't determine it because they're just so clean.
Once a prop is in storage, no one cares.
Yeah. Because
So-
it's used then, and that's kind of done its thing.
So, I mean, in a way, we're lucky it even exists.
And I remember in like a picture, you've got some bodies and you've got a few of the midsections just lying on like a pallet truck. So it's like, it's a wonder that they correspond.
In the case of this one, the bolt holes, at least in the shoulders, they're in weird places.
Weird
that don't
places, yeah.
line up.
Mm.
So it's likely that
So you
didn't fit on.
You couldn't mismatch them. I had those little step ladders which were on the video, and it was like, well, I had the top one, but I had a cramp mid getting in because it was hard. But if you've got the middle off, then you're all right. It has a break.
the break, so you could.
Oh yeah, bugger. Because the primary vision thing is meant to be the holes in the neck rings, right?
Yeah, which
I always thought.
but they blocked most of them up, so you can't.
Right, this is not foot. The jeans don't help. Yeah. Okay. It's it's quite nicer without the top bit because you can the cracks. You can see the floor. I'm waiting for a bumping sound, but like
When it's in storage, just right over there.
that was actually quite exhilarating. It is that like
The top.
let go cut.
It's interesting. This was cast upside down.
Yeah.
Because you can see the
Yeah.
drips.
Ah, all the drips are running up.
Stuff like this, if it can be displayed, if it can be shown to people, it should be.
But ultimately, this stuff was made for entertainment, right? So it's
Yeah.
like they should probably be entertaining
And a
people.
lot of it just doesn't exist anymore because you make it, it does its thing, and then bin.
Mhm.
So,
Right, let's get it in.
yeah.
So we've been over all the details of what's going to be happening with the Dalek as part of the restoration process. Shouldn't be too long. And yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't get worse, just better.
It was like opening an advent calendar over the next 2 weeks, as each day I received progress photos from Marley, detailing each step of the restoration. Firstly, it was Dalek bath time, as in addition to all of the damage, he was covered in what's quite possibly actual Dalek crap. Marley deduced that this brown sludge could be the very same that oozed from the Dalek casings in the climax of The Witch's Familiar. Of course, the paradigm didn't feature in the final episode, but the implication is that the props were used as a test rig prior to filming, backed up by photographs showing them stood just outside the set. Next up was paint matching, which was a particularly important step. Seeing as the original paint was mixed at a car spraying place, it was only appropriate that the new paint should be mixed at one too. The entire Dalek was taken and scanned by a spectrograph, which then accurately reproduced the metallic red and grey. I was relieved to see that the metallic red in particular was a perfect match, as this finish has the tendency to look completely different under varying lighting conditions. The only issue was the base, as there was so much damage and varying layers of black and grey paint that it was impossible to get an accurate reading. So for this, Marley and Amelia went by eye and picked a dark grey that seemed to perfectly match the original base colour. Then it was sanded down and prepped for painting, but in doing so revealed that metallic red paint was originally present along the top half of the base. This is bizarre, as it implies that a two-tone base could have been considered for this redesign, akin to that seen on the Saucer Commander in the second Peter Cushing Dalek movie. The next day I received these pictures of the newly painted base attached to the skirt, but something was off. The base looked far too light and more closely resembled that of the Doctor Who live props. Marley and Amelia agreed and came to the conclusion that this grey was indeed used, but lightly dusted over a matte black, which gives the base this unique textured look that's especially noticeable under bright lighting. So we'd inadvertently discovered that with the live props, this step was just missed out, resulting in those lighter grey bases that helped to differentiate them from the originals. The following morning, the 41 surviving hemispheres were all numbered accordingly and unscrewed from the skirt, bar one which refused to move, so was instead worked around. The body was then prepped for painting. It would have been significantly easier to just respray the whole thing as with the base, but the better overall condition of the skirt meant that it only required smaller touch-ups, so the extra effort was made to preserve the original paint wherever possible. The skirt looked incredibly slick with all of the damage repaired, and it was impossible to tell where the new paint met the original. Only one chip remained, and that was the one used to identify the prop in the past. The original idea was to keep this, but it was pointed out by Marley that this would be the only visible damage left, and if we were otherwise aiming for the prop's original look from Asylum of the Daleks, it would be odd to leave this single chip. Additionally, we know with certainty that the prop is original, and it has many other physical attributes that support this. So the decision was ultimately left to me, and the chip is no more. Next, a silicone mould was made of the most intact hemisphere, and so the process began of casting replacements for the 7 missing hemispheres, with an additional 4 to replace those that were still present but damaged beyond repair. This resulted in a total of 11 hemispheres being newly cast and sanded down, before all 48 were given a fresh coat of metallic grey paint. Over the next few days, the hemispheres were still being cast, sanded down, primed, painted and lacquered, before each was screwed back into its original position on the body. I particularly love this shot of the whole thing upside down, where you can see the meticulous labelling of each hemisphere. The final section tackled was the shoulders, which are similarly flipped upside down here. The large chunks taken out of the corners were filled in with body filler, so that the once jagged edges now appear smooth and robust once more. So far everything had gone smoothly, and the only remaining part was the metallic red band around the top of the shoulders. An attempt was made to prime the damaged spots in the same manner as before, but this time the paint reacted badly, resulting in this horrifying cracked texture. And it was going so well. So why did it happen here and thankfully not anywhere else? Well, apparently there were 5 existing layers of paint under the lacquer of this particular section, which implies the production team experimented with different paints, which apparently didn't get on too well with the new paint. So after spending some more time sanding down the offending layers, Marley and Amelia finally reached a surface that would take the new paint without reacting. This resulted in a smooth and clean finish that, despite covering most of the original paint, perfectly replicated the original look. All we needed now was for the lacquer to dry, and then a fly landed in it. Thankfully, this one wasn't destined to become fossilized like the mosquitoes from Jurassic Park, as it was swiftly removed with the area being smoothed over. Good timing too, as all of a sudden it was collection day. As I was satisfied with each individual part of the restoration, I'd requested not to see the full thing until we arrived in person. This would allow for a surprise reveal, much like those house renovation programs on Channel 4.
No idea where my dad's gone, but oh well. Let's just roll with it. It's been like, what, 2 weeks leading up to this year, and we're finally back at, what's it called?
Shed.
The shed. The shed where the Dalek's been done. So the idea is we're going to roll up this shutter, and the Dalek's going to be there in one piece.
Maybe 3.
Cue the music and the fog and shit. That is quite sexy. Oh, I love the smell of the paint.
Yes.
I'll tell you what though, right? The bit that was like thingy was this whole base thing. But that looks spot on. Every other part was like, you could reference the colours and stuff, yeah.
So, obviously the skirt and this part of the shoulders are the same red. The hemispheres and the shoulders are the same metallic, sort of gunmetalish colour. But, we ended up having to get 2 different paints mixed because this is over the red and this is just over grey. And it didn't match, so...
I love how, like, when you compare them, I think side by side as well, it'd be so much, like, the whole base thing, how much cleaner that looks without the... I don't know, did you find out whether it was dirt in there?
It was dirt. It was mainly dirt. I don't know how, but they got mud in between these books.
Mine the hemispheres.
It really begs the question. Oh, he's got little black things in here as well.
Oh, yeah. A dead.
Disguises it for the minute. I mean, the inside as well is even cleaner.
4 or 5 times.
So he's just needing like this, and then it would be like complete.
All the new hemispheres, I think we did.
Oh, the hemisphere, that's probably the most impressive bit.
11
think.
new hemispheres.
11?
11.
Christ.
So these are some of the ones that were too
Oh,
damaged
yeah.
to use.
Uh-huh.
This one's split up. This one was arrowdited to the skirt, but didn't have the dome. So we had to
Oh, I remember that one, yeah.
get this off
Yeah.
and make
Kinda-
a new one. You can have those.
Oh, wonderful.
This is the mould that we used to make the new
Oh, yeah.
hemispheres. This was the first attempt. This one didn't work because I don't remember why it didn't work, but it didn't.
We put too much stuff in there and it started exothermic reaction and it started smoking and then we had to evacuate it.
Oh,
So we had the resin shell and then we filled them with this rigid foam so they can't cave in.
Like what's in your walls and stuff.
It's quite similar
Kind
to
of,
that. I
isn't
don't know if it's exactly the same stuff, but it is very similar.
oh, and then these are the colour things.
Samples the red and then the 2 different gunmetals. Well, they're
That's bloody
the same,
bizarre.
but it was very hard to tell them apart.
I suppose for the main red bits on the skirt and stuff, that's kind of just really smoothly blended in.
Yeah, so the only bits that are new paint is the very top and the very bottom. With this section, this is all new red because of the problem that we had with the lacquer. If they were doing it for TV again, they would go straight over it. But we didn't want to do that because it's not, well, it may be on TV again at some point, but what you asked us to do was to keep as much original as we could. So that's what we've done.
Yeah.
This was...
That was horrendously, yeah.
We cleaned it up, reinforced around the hole. That
Cool.
was very loose. There were a few bits around here where the fiberglass either was never properly consolidated or because they cut it with a jigsaw, it got delaminated. So if these bits of gel coat took an impact, they would just break off. So we fixed that. The only sort of structural things have been if they're absolutely needed for the piece to keep its like longevity, but everything else has been sort of very minor cosmetic work.
All these bits where it was like completely like
It
chips
was-
off
yeah,
and
this-
stuff. Trying to think.
Well,
Yes,
Yes. Really see it, but
this top bit, yeah,
This had a big
particularly.
bit. This bit, I think, was hanging on by a thread,
Yeah.
so we had to repair that.
Yeah. But yeah, there was hideous grime and cobwebs and stuff at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Many spiders. Have been-
Really?
Yeah. Well, they live in here, and then they crawl.
Horrible.
So that's why we vacuumed it so many times.
Did you know that though, Dad? All the sensor globes are where they were originally. Isn't it? There's a picture somewhere where there's all these notes. So each one went back where it came from.
This was number 1, and then this was
You
number
remember
48.
Then Marley propelled himself into the prop and showed off some Dalek driving skills.
So, got a bit of a Dalek cam here, but yeah, this is my setup that we've got. And we've got these patches put here with, sealed with polycarbide duct tape. And that'll keep it in there just to prevent people from seeing the inside before he's fully restored. But yeah, he's generally a lot cleaner, less arachnids, and just more pleasant to be. Whole entertainment system. Look at this, there's a button here, press it and just like it flies.
But before we wrapped up, Marley and Amelia had one last surprise. I ended up donning a replica Vok robot head, which was derived from an original 1970s prop. This resulted in nightmare fuel. And with that, part 1 of the restoration was complete. This Dalek drone has gone from a battered old shell of its former self, neglected by the BBC for the past decade, to a clean and shiny shell that looks like it's just rolled off the production line in 2012, ready for its head and appendages. Speaking of which, the plan for the next episode is to recreate the missing rear hatch, before working our way upwards with the help of Connor's Doctor Who live prop for reference. But I have a feeling that the corresponding neck and head are out there somewhere, whether that be with the BBC in the new studios, the prop store archive, or in the hands of private collectors. So I'd like to make a last minute appeal that if anyone has seen a red Paradigm Dalek head floating around, feel free to give us a bell. But yeah, overall, still a very surreal experience. So thanks to not only Marley and Amelia, whose work you can check out in the links below, but family and friends for making it all possible, and all of you for your support online.
So thanks for watching everyone, and I'm gonna kind of skedaddle in the Dalek. Hopefully, probably very slowly. Goodbye.